Are the Browns really trending towards Travis Hunter? Draft day trade scenarios and much more tonight on The React. What is happening? This is the OBR Streaming Network. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always fantastic Pete Smith. This is The React. Good to see you filing into the chat. Appreciate you all for being here. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on your way in or out, and the notification bell so you know every time we go live on the channel. Getting you ready for the draft. Just, over 2 weeks away here. And we will have the 2025 Draft Cave wall-to-wall coverage from pick 1, before pick 1, all the way till the final selection. We got you covered here. What's going on, Pete?
Not too much. My co-host forgot my name for a second. Other than that, I'm doing pretty good.
Oh, I didn't forget your name. I just paused for dramatic effect.
Sure, let's go with that.
Pete? It's Pete, right? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's really where we're at, and I'm excited about tonight's show. I've been excited to hear what you have to say about the all the Travis Hunter smoke. As a Carter truther, I'm sure you're going to set us straight here tonight. So, what do you think about all the smoke towards Hunter? Is it real, or is this just a flavor of the week, silly season? And it's all going to come back to Carter in the end?
I think for the most part, it is purely media catching up to the reality of the situation, which is for the longest time, the notion was that the Browns were seriously considering taking Shedeur Sanders at 2. And anyone who's been subscribed to the OBR, paying attention to the OBR, basically knew that was over, months ago. But it really became clear after the combine, where the league sort of let everybody know that that Shedeur Sanders is a talented quarterback prospect. He's not 2. He's not second pick in the draft good. And for reasons that I don't want to say are dishonest, but it was making an argument that didn't really exist. Yeah. And then finally, Jimmy Haslam comes out and says, we're not forcing the pick at 2. And there are still people who insist they're still going to take Shedeur Sanders at 2, even though Jimmy Haslam has basically come out and given the very clear indication that they don't have to pick a quarterback. And the only reason he would say that is that he knows they're not going to pick a quarterback at 2. So now what do you have? You're left with, well, if it's not Shedeur Sanders and Abdul Carter, well, what's the next option? Well, it's Abdul Carter and then Travis Hunter. And the Browns have liked Travis Hunter the entire process. This is not a new development. So, and beyond that, the Browns haven't decided who they're picking yet, according to our reporting. So you have gotten to a point where those are the 2 main guys at this point, and the Browns are deciding between them. So part of you sits there and go, well, part of this is everybody's at pro day for Travis Hunter, and they saw him. And there's this implication that Andrew Berry really loved him based on that, which, may or may not be. I mean, as I said, he has liked him the entire process. It's not like a new development. But when you are covering this stuff, it doesn't hurt to have said the Browns are in on both guys, so that when the Browns pick one of them, well, then everybody gets, I had that, knew it. They're going to pick this guy. I said it on this date. I go back, even though for the next 3 weeks, I said this guy and then another guy. There's this element of you've covered all your bases in terms of that. Now, so there's this, I think, a little bit of making up for the fact that he wasn't a real consideration this whole time. He's certainly in the conversation. So I think that's part of it. But ultimately, nothing has really changed to this point. The Browns are going to the combine medical recheck is this week, which is obviously important for Abdul Carter. Whether or not they're going to put him through a private workout to be determined. Those things are probably going to allow them to then start sitting down and going, hey, what do we really want to do here? But, again, at the league meetings, Andrew Berry said we're going to use the entire shot clock to make this decision. That is has been true to this point. So it certainly works from that standpoint. Now, the other thing that works for the Browns is people have sort of put the Browns on Abdul Carter this whole time.
Yeah.
If Andrew Berry were to put it out there or have somebody else put it out there that they're in on Travis Hunter, it potentially shakes loose trade possibilities or somebody looking to make a deal and sort of getting that look at it. So you get a couple weeks of the teams really think we're going to do this. What does that then cause? It maybe nothing, but it doesn't hurt to have that out there and sort of look at it. So if you're asking me ultimately, my preference is obviously still Carter. Yeah. And then I still think it's still going to be Carter, but that's largely based on just historical context and the fact that just if you look at draft history, edge rushers that are rated this high do not go after wide receivers rated this high. It just doesn't happen. And there are a number of reasons for that. The easiest one to select is that the defensive end and edge rusher / linebacker guy doesn't need somebody else to be good for him to be good. Whereas unless you are the truly, truly special receivers, and obviously if you're taking Travis Hunter at 2, you believe he is this guy. Yeah. You believe he's going to have a Josh Gordon-like impact where he can have a 1,600-yard season, and you don't remember a single quarterback who threw him the ball that year. Or Calvin Johnson sort of catching balls from Reggie Ball at Georgia Tech type impact. You're believing that Travis Hunter is so good, he's going to make whoever's throwing him the ball, whether it's Kenny Pickett or whoever, is going to be sort of good enough that it doesn't matter. I understand why people believe that of Travis Hunter. I think he's a sensationally talented prospect, but there's a lot more projection with him. Whereas Carter, you can say, I've seen him do it. He has the production that trace, historical context would say is elite of the elite. Like it's Myles Garrett level production for this, for his career in college. He's a world-class athlete. He's barely 21 years old. He's actually 6 months younger than Travis Hunter. He plays an absolutely critical position. And there's this argument where you get into this, what's more valuable, a defensive end or edge rusher or a wide receiver? And unless you get to the absolute pinnacle of wide receiver, the best of the best guys, edge rusher is always going to win that battle. So you are then saying that Travis Hunter's got to achieve that, because in every other way, if these guys are even, the edge rusher is going to be better. So I ultimately default to that position. In addition to the fact that the Browns have an opportunity, and I don't think this is lost on Andrew Berry, and everybody can point to the offense and go, the offense is bad, the offense is bad. I don't think Andrew Berry drafts that way. He tells you he doesn't draft that way. But he has an opportunity to give the Cleveland Browns, who have been in existence since 1946, the best pass rush this team has ever had, in a division with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and everybody else in the AFC currently. And at least for the moment, the Browns are not going to have a quarterback that can compete with those guys. You're hoping that you're going to find that guy in this draft or next draft or whatever. But until you have that guy or somebody that's at least, comparable, nobody's putting Kenny Pickett in the same sentence as Lamar at this point. You know what I mean?
No.
Then you have the opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to bring your quarterback down to Kenny Pickett's level. And you can do that by drafting a guy like Abdul Carter, putting him with Myles Garrett and all these other defensive linemen they've had, and saying, okay, we don't get to have a great quarterback, neither do you. And I think that's a really tantalizing prospect. I just have a difficult time with the amount of what ifs you're applying to Travis Hunter, where if you picked him at sort of 12th pick, for example, or 20th pick, you can do a whole lot of, well, maybe he can be, we can play him on both sides of the ball. He can be pretty good because it's 12th pick in the draft at the 20th pick in the draft. If you pick him too, he has to be a superstar. And so at that point, he needs to be a superstar. The easiest way to do that is to make sure he's doing it on one side of the ball.
Right. And I agree with you there. Like, and I hear a lot of people talking about, like, the one wild card about that is you said, historically he needs to be this good of a wide receiver, and we don't know that, but there's him playing both sides of the ball aspect, right? Like, which is kind of something that we don't really have any reference to in the past, right? Somebody that says they can do it on both sides of the ball, and you have some people advocating for that for him. I'm with you on, like, he's a receiver and he needs to be a receiver full time first for a significant amount of time before you start to utilize him in other ways. But I think that a lot of this hype probably has to do with the chronologically, the Colorado Pro Day was last.
Sure.
They had, I think a lot has to do with that, a little bit of recency bias there. And you have all these guys after that coming out and talking about what a generational talent that Travis Hunter is. Do you think he is that generational talent?
In the sense that he's one of a kind, in the sense that we've never seen a player like this. You have to go back to, antiquated football where they barely have helmets on to get guys who are truly playing Ironman football the way that he has, or go back to Holy Cross in the 80s when the dude who was candidate for the Heisman did it. It just doesn't happen. You don't have guys do this. And Andrew Berry even sort of dismissed the notion that he's like Champ Bailey or he's like Charles Woodson because he's playing a full game's worth of reps on both sides of the ball. And not only that, in order to accommodate that, one, he barely practiced. And then two, they're basically telling him the routes during the game to go run, which, speaks to his ability that he's that good. And there's this argument, well, he doesn't have to go to class. He can do all these other things. That's fine. But, the meetings are at the time they're at the time, and the CBA doesn't care. The CBA limits how much practice time you have. So you can't just go out there and do endless amounts of reps. And beyond all that, there's just the simple fact that there's human frailty. And the more things he does, the more risk of injury he has. So if he gets hurt on one side of the ball, he's hurt on both sides of the ball. So even if you think he's a great wide receiver and a great corner, if he pulls his hamstring, you are doubly screwed because now you've taken down two starters, which is just a risky proposition in itself. And certainly if you could get that would be great. But that is what makes him a generational talent. If you're just saying as a wide receiver, he's phenomenal. A top 5 wide receiver in the league. I think that isn't within the range of outcomes, but I just think people underestimate just how steep the hill is for a wide receiver picked that high to be that good. Like Keyshawn Johnson was the number 1 pick in the draft. He's a disappointment as a relative, number 1 pick. Even though everybody knows his name, he's a broadcaster and all these other things. He's still a disappointing pick relative to what you expect to get from that type of player. It's really hard. And again, you are often in a situation where you are relying on somebody else. So there are just a lot of pitfalls with a Travis Hunter. I think the kid is phenomenal. I think the talent is legitimate. The Browns let's put it this way. They've obviously had him for the team visit. He's met with them, at the pro day and all this other stuff. I would hope that if the Browns are picking them, at some point during the conversations, he said, I'm perfectly happy to be a wide receiver, and I will prove to you that it's worth putting me on the other side of the ball at some point. But everything in terms of his branding everything in terms of the way he talks. He's everything in terms of how he wants to be introduced at the draft. He says he wants to be introduced as wide receiver and DB, Travis Hunter. Deion Sanders, his coach, keeps talking about playing on both sides of the ball. To me, I would, if I'm the Browns or whoever's drafting him, I want to know how much of that is just hype, how much of that is selling himself versus reality. Because if he's coming, if you're the Browns, and again, this is assuming they aren't like all aboard this nonsense of putting on both sides. You can't draft him and then suddenly you're already in an argument about playing, where to use him. Like,
correct.
He has to be totally on board with the plan for him. And somewhere along the lines, you would have had to have gotten that confirmation to feel good about making that selection.
Yeah, you will have to iron that out before you take him. He's gonna, whatever you intend for him, your plan, and who knows what the Browns' plan is. Although I would think that, I think me and you agree that trying to go both ways with him right away as a rookie is not the best route to go.
I think it's suicide.
Yeah. So, and I would agree. So I think that, playing him at wide receiver, though, is tantalizing. My question is, like, if you see him as that athlete, isn't it possible? I mean, you said it's a big hill. I don't think it's that great of a leap to see him being a prolific wide receiver in the NFL.
I guess that depends on what you mean, because like right now, Marvin Harrison after his rookie year looks like a massive disappointment. He may bounce back and be great, but it does not look good right now. He looked definitively worse than Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. And the competition, this is not as talented as that class was last year, but he has to be the best guy. Like, he has to be the best guy of the class. Ladd McConkey can't come out of the second round to be better than him, which is what happened with Marvin Harrison. And I'm not saying Marvin Harrison won't be good, but that is what it looks like coming out of the first year. And that is where it really
doesn't matter as much as somebody like coming out of nowhere and being as good, but can he be what you project him to be is more about what it is. I don't really care about if somebody comes out of the second round and is better than him. I care if he is going to, catch 80 balls and put up 1,200 yards or whatever. Right.
Yeah. I think it's within the realm of outcomes, but it has to happen. That's the problem. And like, I think, and it would be the same for Abdul Carter. He's got to come out and have 10
years,
sacks.
Right?
Yeah. Like, it's going to be the same expectation if you pick Abdul Carter. If he doesn't have 10 sacks, we did this with Myles Garrett. How many years did it take for people to actually finally get that he was good? So that may be built in because you are taking a non-quarterback at this pick. There's always this element of how good are they? I mean, Joe Thomas, to a certain extent, faced it to a little bit, but had the benefit of making the Pro Bowl, I think, as a rookie and then winning 10 games. The medical recheck is this week.
And what will that entail, basically?
They're going to – he flies back. I assume he will fly back to Indianapolis. They will re-image on the stress reaction, which is not a stress fracture, no matter what anyone wants to tell you. That is a precursor to a stress fracture. Stress reaction is there's a fracture is a fracture. Reaction is a precursor where it could lead to a fracture. To this point, unless the Dallas Cowboys team doctor had reason to lie about this, that is what the deal is. And and he has been working out for this nonsense that he hasn't been. He's on freaking, hey, rookie, welcome to the NFL, where you see him working out during this hiatus. So they'll re-image. I don't know which team doctor will look at him, if it'll be the same one, every different one. That guy, or whoever does the test, they will send it out to all 32 teams again, and they will get the results of that. And there are a whole bunch of guys that are going to be in that, and a whole bunch of guys that I know Browns fans wouldn't second guess taking, like if they took the left tackle from Ohio State, who's going to be at the medical recheck. He's going to have to get checked out for his patella tendon. There's a whole lot of these guys that are going to have to get rechecked. Jalen Walker might be who's going to visit the Browns or may have been there today. Has to get a recheck, I think, for his thigh. There's a whole lot of players that if something was flagged, they're going to have to get relooked at, and teams will then have to judge based on that. Whatever they get. So with Carter, it's obviously the main thing is his foot, and then any lingering questions about the shoulder. What are they going to do with that? But yeah, I mean that's sort of the process for it, and that information will come out. At one point, Drew Rosenhaus teased the possibility of doing a private workout. And I don't think a private workout would mean full bore him doing stuff. I think what that ends up being is sort of like what they do with quarterbacks, where a lot of it is sort of giving them stuff to do in terms of like, concepts for them to sort of, execute, and little bits of coaching. Kevin Stefanski sort of touched on this again at the league meeting, talking about the little things he can do in terms of like coaching them and making suggestions and seeing how they take them, or what it might look like if you do this and those type of things. So that is where, obviously the meetings at the facility, they can do, they can put them on the board and stuff, but you can't make them physically do anything. The workout you can do physical. It doesn't mean you're going to go full bore, because there is risk with that in the sense that somebody could pop an Achilles or, ACL or whatever. So there isn't a huge element of that unless there's a significant concern, but those have sort of gone by the wayside a little bit. But it is more of a standpoint of, hey, what would it look like if we did, this look? What would your processing be, and those type of things, where you can actually do a little bit more coaching and stuff. And that would happen, has to happen at the player's school that he attended. So in this case, they would have to go back to Happy Valley to do it, which might be a reason they don't. But hey, if they want to be doubly sure or do all the things, that is certainly an option. Which
you should probably.
I mean, given the length of the amount of due diligence the Browns have done, I'd be shocked if they didn't do something. Just a question of what that would entail. And according to Abdul Carter himself, he has had a whole lot of time with the Browns and feels very comfortable with the Browns. So we'll see what that ends up meaning. It could be great for him in terms of being the pick. It could mean absolutely nothing, and he ends up being a Giant.
All right, let's get to the first video, as we're going to talk about some of this stuff. A lot of the videos are on this topic and around the topic of the top 3 picks and just kind of what's out there. So we'll address more of this as we go along here. But this was Schefter, courtesy of the Pat McAfee show, who,
Schefter's having a rough go, man. He is not doing well this draft season when it comes to the Browns.
Yeah, he's come off of his, I got it wrong with the quarterback thing, he said multiple times, and here he is on Pat McAfee show.
Hey, I think the Browns are going quarterback at number 2, no matter what, given their situation. Now things unfold. It could be Travis Hunter. It could be Abdul Carter. We have no idea. What are you thinking is going to happen at 2 for the Browns?
Well, that's the thing with the draft, Ty. It's a moving target, and it constantly evolves, and teams' needs and desires change along the way as they go through the evaluation process. A couple of months ago, I was of the mind and the impression, based on things people told me, that the Browns were likely to go quarterback, and they were. But that was because they wanted Cam Ward, and Cam Ward isn't going to be there at number 2. And so once they realized that, they came off that. And then we shifted to Abdul Carter, where there were a lot of people that felt like the Browns were going to take Abdul Carter and match him opposite Myles Garrett. And you know what? They still could. They still might. But the latest intel now is that I believe Travis Hunter is the more likely pick at 2 today, a couple of weeks out of the NFL draft, for a couple of different reasons. I think the Cleveland Browns watched him on Friday at his pro day, and they saw somebody that could move like nobody else. I think that going into that day, they viewed him as somebody they could play at wide receiver, and I think sprinkle in defensive back. So I think he could play 2 ways for them, but I think they may think of him more as a receiver than a cornerback, and they're going to need him to concentrate. And I think he brings them some star power, and there are a lot of people who believe he is the single best player in this draft. So there's a lot of reasons why we could see him going number 2, but it is kind of interesting that I feel like it's shifted from the quarterback to Abdul Carter to Travis Hunter today, and who knows if and when it'll shift again before the draft.
So Schefter's all over the place there. He's shifting with the media, the rest of the media there with his takes, it feels like. Listen, I get like to the common fan, you look at the Browns, and there are a lot of people that are saying that will come out, trusted scouts that will come out and say that Travis Hunter is the best player in this draft, right? But when they say that, they're talking about as a football player. You're less say he's the best receiver in this draft, which is what's hard, right? Because you're projecting like, hey, he hasn't been a full-time receiver. I tend to think he'll be fine. I think he would be not fine. I think he would be an elite receiver either way. Just because he seems to be that talented. But I think, what do you say to people that are like, Browns have to find a way to score points? They were comically bad on offense. And taking another defensive player at 2 when you have a potential offensive weapon there is just silly.
So, one, I am confident DTR is not going to roll out there as the quarterback because he's on the Eagles. I would like to think that the offensive line won't be as bad this year. I would like to think they will have a running game this year, but that's one of the things they have to be able to address. They've got to get better quarterback play. So, yeah, I mean, undoubtedly weapons would help, but just being better at the most basic things would make them a better offense. So that part is certainly important. But the Browns defense is not so good that you can sit there and go, well, they're just done with that side of the ball. They're not. They have needs that they have to address. Some of them probably won't be addressed until after this draft is over, like safety. But like, we are not talking about the reincarnation of the steel curtain at this point. And then you just have to go get great offense. So ultimately, the Browns are, regardless of how you want to look at this situation, the Browns are in a situation where they just need more guys. They need more talent. They need to get better at everything, defense included. So if their defense is phenomenal, it's going to reduce the burden on their offense to score points. It may score points itself. Like, for example, Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. It was 34-6 after the third quarter. The Eagles defense was outscoring the Chiefs at that point, 7-6. So if you can get that type of defense on the field, it's going to make your offense better. In the same way that if they had good special teams, it make the other things better. We've seen this play out because in the year before, when the Browns had a historic defense, it allowed them to sort of figure it out. We've seen the Steelers do this for years. Even when they had Kenny Pickett, they won 10 games because their defense and special teams were good enough that it kept them in the game and it reduced the amount of points they were going to have to score. Like, even if the Browns get Travis Hunter and do some other things, they can't give up 30. So you'd like to think the defense is going to be better. You'd like to think that you make the argument they're not going to be as tired, all this other stuff. Okay, but the part of the problem you run into is if Myles Garrett is out for a week, the defense is immediately significantly worse. He is a franchise quarterback-like impact on that defense. So that is one of the things I worry about. Yes, they have players that I really like on the defense. They've got interest, Isaiah McGuire, Mike Hall, Jawan Briggs, all these really young guys are really interesting. I really like the addition of Malik Collins.
Real quick, like Isaiah McGuire, like, what about the people that say, wouldn't you want to give Isaiah McGuire a bigger role? And you're denying him from that. Like, he's shown some growth and we liked what we saw. Do you want to give him a bigger role to see what he can grow into? And you're denying him that by taking a player in his position.
I disagree that I'm denying him that because I'm going to use Abdul Carter in a way that's going to allow them to use both guys.
Okay.
Because if they want to put Abdul Carter on the field with Isaiah McGuire, they can do that. They can put him in a linebacker spot. They can put him just put 5 defensive linemen on the field. The Browns have done this last year. They've done this in previous years where they've just used a 50 front. At times, if Devin Bush was the 5th guy, Abdul Carter is certainly going to. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Abdul Carter is going to be better than Devin Bush in that role. But beyond that, Isaiah McGuire is great at being a run player, and I'm hoping he's going to take another step as a pass rusher. These are things I hope that are going to happen. But if he's great and gets a big tackle for loss on first down and it's 2nd and 13, I can either keep him on the field and put Abdul Carter on there and get another pass rusher, or I can take him off the field and get a better pass rush package. And you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, this is what they were doing with Nolan Smith and Josh Sweat and some of these guys, where they could get that faster package in the game. And, Milton Williams and Josh Sweat split 5 sacks or whatever it was in the Super Bowl between them. And they're both gone. And the Eagles certainly would like to get more talent, but they're certainly not completely out of guys. So you can get 60% snaps or 50% snaps out of Isaiah McGuire and find 60% snaps, 50% snaps out of Abdul Carter. And at some point, you would like to get into a situation where, yes, you would like to have Myles Garrett be out there for 80% of the snaps or whatever. But if the Browns are really good, and 1, they're getting off the field faster, and 2, they just have enough dudes that you can drop his percentage down to, say, 70% or 65%. Those reps are going to carry over and save him for longer in the season. One of the criticisms Myles Garrett will get is he comes out to a hot start and then sort of tails off at the end of the year at points. Well, part of that is because he's on the field so damn much, because they don't have enough credible guys, because literally when he's off the field, the defense is a completely worse setup. So get more guys they're going to allow to take the pressure off him. I think Malik Collins can help them do that, but that is where an opportunity like Abdul Carter presents itself and is great. Now, in the same sense that if you take Travis Hunter, it's not like they can't go get another pass rusher, but I also don't look at Travis Hunter as a one-off proposition where if you don't take Travis Hunter, they can't get a wide receiver. And this is part of the problem. And this is where you get.
I guess that's the question, right? I mean, ultimately, that's the question. Like, do you think he can be special as a wide receiver? Like, don't you think that's certainly within the outcomes?
Yes, I do.
That he's like Malik Neighbors?
Yeah, I think you can end up in a scenario where he's your true number 1 receiver. You've got Jerry Jeudy as a really, really good 2. And you've got Cedric Tillman and you've got David Njoku and you've got whatever else you're going to do. Which is, if you can guarantee that, that's absolutely a great outcome. It's just a question of what is more valuable to you in the moment, or what is also more likely to happen. Is he going to be the best of the best guys, and is it going to be better than what Abdul Carter can give you? I question.
You think Abdul's more of a sure thing?
Do what?
You obviously think Abdul is more of a sure thing.
Yeah, based on how I do it, which is I go off things I can prove. Which is
played 1 year in that position. You know what I mean? And can he run down the run game in the NFL? Is he good enough against the run in the NFL? Is he just strictly a pass rusher? Like, I don't feel this way. I'm just what I heard somebody say the other day. I haven't seen enough of that on tape, is what I heard somebody say the other day about him. And then you have question marks about his health.
Well, the health thing is always interesting to me because, it's interesting because something was brought up to me the other day. Nick Chubb had one of the most horrifying knee injuries in the history of football in college. 2 years later, he's drafted by the Browns in the 2nd round. No one questions his career. He was one of the best running backs in all of football, and he had this major injury. Abdul Carter's had nothing. A stretch reaction. The Browns don't play till September. This isn't a situation.
His critics will just say, I forget who. I wish I could reference who it was, but it was somebody going off, and I wanted to find it for the show. But they were saying I haven't seen enough of Abdul Carter. I've seen him win off the edge for 1 year against college competition. I haven't seen him run down plays and, or whatever. That was this thing, like run down plays or whatever. Like he'll have to in the NFL. And to me, when I turn on the tape, he's not Micah Parsons.
Okay. So let's talk about what Abdul Carter actually has to do.
Do you agree or no?
No.
Okay.
He has to develop a legitimate power profile in the NFL. To this point, in the 1 year he has played edge, he has been a speed-based rusher. He's not weak by any stretch. He can squat 600 pounds. He can bench 350. He can power clean, or bench 375. He can power clean 350. That was before this year per Bruce Feldman. He's strong. He's very strong. He's just never had to use it. And he hasn't been a defensive end long enough to really explore that element. So he's been winning on speed. And that's why I personally like to compare him to Von Miller, because I have gone back and watched him, Von Miller, in 2011. And it looks like Abdul Carter's just been ripping off all his moves. And I say this with all love. This is what he should be doing. The ghost move, some of the other things that Von Miller was doing at Texas A&M, it's like point for point. Micah Parsons had a little bit more of a power profile coming out of college. Now, the difference is Parsons had never been an edge rusher. He was a linebacker. In fact, he was drafted as a off-ball linebacker. And it wasn't until he got to Dallas and Dan Quinn sort of said, screw it, let's just put him on the edge and see what happens. Abdul Carter's at least given you that. He can win with speed. He's got the ghost move. He can use his hands well. He gets off blocks at a really high level. The idea that he can't, his pursuit is world-class. He chases stuff down from behind. I mean, there's all these clips. The Notre Dame one where he catches the run for a tackle for loss all the way across the line of scrimmage is impressive. The one that blows me away, and granted, it's like 3rd and 20 some. It doesn't really matter in terms of this. It's a screen against Purdue, and he is all the way on the left. They throw a tunnel screen on the other side, and he chases it down effortlessly. There's like little out routes against Oregon. He just hawks down because you watch him run, and he gains so much ground with these steps. His first step explosion is world class. I was listening to Chris Sims the other day, and he is completely Carter pilled, and said, quote, he does Lawrence Taylor crap from a guy whose dad played with Lawrence Taylor and is very familiar with Lawrence Taylor. Yeah. So he's got to develop a power profile. He's got to develop how to sort of give offensive blockers more than just speed, because eventually there is an element where you are just so fast, you're just going to win. And he may have that. But if he can keep them honest with a little bit of power or speed to power, which Chris Sims is very confident he has, then he's going to be that extra element that's going to make him great. He has to prove, and this is where I don't worry about this, in part because they have Isaiah McGuire. He's ultimately got to figure this out. But in year one, I don't care. Is the holding the edge as a rusher. I don't care about that in his rookie year. Isaiah McGuire is excellent at it. So you take these two guys and you make them into one super complete dominant edge opposite Myles Garrett, essentially giving you Myles Garrett on both sides of the ball, in my mind, by sort of the composite. If you can do that, you're going to be really happy with it. But he has to prove that element. I think, and this is me projecting, I think he's going to gain some weight because the people who say he was playing like 230 some, he was as a sophomore. When he was a linebacker and you look at him, he is a different looking dude. He's very lean, much lighter when he's a linebacker, but he's a legit 250. I think he's going to continue.
His weight is deceiving because he's so fast, honestly, I think.
Well, that and just like his legs are super thick, but he's just very packed. And this is sort of what part of the deception here. I'll use a bad comparison without all the facts, but for the sake of making an illustration, Penn State is arguably the best strength and conditioning program in the country. None of their guys look like the Hulk. Most of the best college football programs in the country at this point, their guys don't look like that. Like going down the Senior Bowl and seeing guys who weigh 330 and you look at them, you're like, there's no way, because they're so lean and long. They aren't like, the Tony Mandarich type where they were just so hulking. Now, the comparison I will make, and it's not entirely fair because it just is what it is. Cam Scatterbo is like listed at 219 or whatever. He looks like he's 250 because he's so big. Now, some of that's just how he's built genetically, but also he was at a JUCO program and then before he ended up at Arizona State. So he wasn't at one of these super high, high caliber programs in terms of strength and conditioning programs. So he looks more like people expect him to look as a big back. So a lot of people want to compare him to like Peyton Hillis, despite the fact he's basically like 25 pounds smaller than Peyton Hillis. There's this expectation, whereas a guy like Quinshon Jenkins is, I think, bigger than, I think he weighs more than Scatterbo. He doesn't look like that super Hulk guy. He's don't get me wrong, he's a very well built player. Nick Chubb, a little bit more that thicker guy, but he was 220 something. Like he's in the mid 220s looking like that. I think people get deceived by how training has evolved with how these guys look. It's just different for flexibility, for all these other things to try to make these guys a little bit more pliable, to make them more explosive. It's just the way they are developed is different. So he looks smaller. So he's got to get a power profile in the NFL to keep offensive tackles more honest. He's got to figure out how to ultimately set the edge, though it's not a huge concern for me initially because they have these other guys that can do it. But he's got to figure it out if he's going to be a full-time player. But beyond that, the other thing I think that is fair to criticize, he's got to get off the ground. He's on the ground a little bit too much. Beyond that, that is a very small list of nitpicks to me from a guy who went from off-ball linebacker to the best edge in college football and now in a very good edge class. And no one questions he's the best guy. It's not even close because he's so much better than everybody else in terms of physical gifts and where he can go. And he's theoretically ascending. And that's the part that gets sort of lost in this. In the same way that Travis Hunter, I think fairly say if Travis Hunter was a wide receiver and nothing else, that he would naturally get better because unlike Colorado where he wasn't, he'd be practicing every day and getting better at his craft and being able to really focus on the nuances of the game and all these other elements. And if he's not playing defense, then he's going to sort of, just get better and better and better. In the same way, I think Abdul Carter
still had the production though. Yes.
In the same way that Abdul Carter has already been super productive, elite world-class production, I think he's also going to get better. And part of the thing, I'll be curious if the Browns make this pick. I will be curious if they have the same thought process as being like, he's going to be playing across from Myles Garrett and all these other guys. He can learn from, he's going to learn from these guys in addition to Jacques Césaire, the defensive line coach who did a really nice job this past year. He's going to learn from Jim Schwartz, and hopefully after this year with, hopefully healthy next offseason, that he's going to go to one of those like trainers that's just going to work on that element and just continue to build his game. Now, the question the Browns have to answer for themselves is, does he want to be that guy? Is he going to be the guy who gets here and looks at Myles Garrett? And this is what I'm hoping they're saying to themselves is like, he was the best player on Penn State. He was the best player by the end of the college football season. He was the best player every game he stepped on the field. If he walks into the Cleveland Browns locker room, he is not. He's not even close to the best player. Right. He's got the best edge rusher in football on the other side. Is he going to accept that as a challenge and go, I got to be as good as this guy? I got to take my game to the next level. In which case, you can get a Von Miller who at one point had 17 and a half sacks in a year. But let's say he's 12 sacks a year, 15 maybe. You're going to absolutely love every minute of that. And then also you're going to get the extras that he brings, which is that the range. And I've said this, I'm sure I've said this on the show before, but when I watched Micah Fitzpatrick at Alabama, it felt like they had 12 guys in the field because he was so rangy. It felt like you had to beat him twice. Abdul Carter, to me, gives you that same feeling where you might beat him up front, but if you are not, because of his pursuit, because of the way he chases down the football, he looks like he takes it personally. that you got to potentially beat him twice on the same play because he's so good. My other hope with a guy like Abdul Carter is that he's so talented, it pushes Myles Garrett to even be better. Now, Myles Garrett is already a Hall of Famer. Arguably, he's in the conversation to be one of the best ever to do it. But I'm hoping that in addition to everything else, that the 160 million reasons he should be, continue to push himself, and just the level, the sort of the level of excellence he sort of demands at himself, that Abdul Carter also gives him sort of a renewed push to sort of go, one, I have to think the second he hears Abdul Carter's name, if that is indeed what happens, he goes, I can get 20. Because Abdul Carter's that good and it's going to take that much pressure off him. But also he's thinking I can get 20 because he's going to push himself that much further and go, oh my God, nobody's going to score on us. And I'm hoping that's ultimately the mentality they get. So I think both, look, to me, that's the conversation. It is either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. And I say that because I think Travis Hunter is that special in terms of what he can be. For me, in addition to the fact I think edge is the second most important position on the field, Abdul Carter has in cement shown you he has done the things that portend greatness. Whereas Travis Hunter, you have to do a little more projecting. It's not unrealistic projecting. I'm not suggesting that it's like you're asking, a player in the 7th round to be a superstar, but you are saying we want to change what you were doing in college, hopefully, in the sense of saying, we don't want you to do everything you're doing. We only want you to do half of it. And we want you to be the best in the world at it. Whereas he was very, very good in college, but he wasn't the best receiver relative to like production and efficiency and all those other things. Abdul Carter was. So that's sort of the separation to me. I think Travis Hunter can be a phenomenal player. And if the Browns can get the quarterback position right, and you have what you hope is a superstar Travis Hunter, and you have Jerry Jeudy and he keeps it going, and David Njoku stays healthy, and Cedric Tillman takes that next step, and they get a running game that you can sort of start talking yourself into this. But if I'm going to feed into your worst fears, I might be saying to myself, yeah, Travis Hunter would be great. I would love to have Travis Hunter. But right now I got Kenny Pickett. Do I really want to draft him now? Or do I want to get a guy who I can maximize the impact on, who's going to, in a sense, if we're talking about, because this is the argument people want to present, wins and losses, in that sense, Abdul Carter represents the potential to produce more meaningful uptick on the standings than potentially Travis Hunter does.
In my contention with that is just, if you're starting Kenny Pickett, then you're not a serious contender either way. So just get as many good football players as you can until you find his replacement, a realistic quarterback that can maybe win some games. But
and again, we've talked about this, but and it would have been true with Jameis Winston if you had, and I said this with Ted McMillan as well, but if you had Joe Flacco just chucking it to Travis Hunter and Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku, it'd be fun. I don't know if it would win a ton of games, but it would at least be fun. So there's that element to it. So, and who knows, depending on the decision the Browns come to in terms of, let's put this, I'm not going to suggest that they're going to be like, no, we're good with Kenny Pickett. What I am suggesting is, I wonder if they decide on Travis Hunter, that provides a little bit more, to use your word, urgency to get better quarterback play, so they don't feel like he's just doing cardio out there on the field, and we're sitting there going, why did we bother with this?
Yeah. All fair points. You're watching the React on the OBR streaming network, but to Larry's point here in the chat, what is this Liars Club tonight? And we don't want to insult anybody, but I do want to point out some, be educational when we can try to be here a little bit. So Amber saying Carter is not Micah. Carter is small and falls a lot. The falls a lot you pointed out, but he is the same size as Micah, I believe, right?
Well, coming out of the draft, he's bigger. Micah Parsons, 236. Now, Micah Parsons has gotten a little bit thicker, and Micah Parsons is a little bit more naturally strong. But look, to suggest that Abdul Carter is small is ridiculous. There's a guy who's 10 pounds lighter than he is who might be in the top 10. That's Jalen Walker. Jalen Walker's 240 soaking wet. And there's a really good chance he's going to be an edge rusher that should
be an edge rusher. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he can do linebacker things, but most people are looking at him as an edge rusher. But like, we live in a world where edge rushers have gotten smaller and faster, relatively speaking. I mean, they're not small at 250 pounds. And this is an insane cognitive dissonance that we're going to call 250 pounds, small as an edge rusher. But like Nolan Smith is lighter than Abdul Carter. Von Miller was basically the exact same dimensions as Abdul Carter. What's his face? Will Anderson is basically the same. I think Will Anderson's actually smaller coming out of college than Abdul Carter. There are all kinds of these guys who are around the league. Max Crosby was not a big guy coming out of college, and he's one of the best edge rushers in football.
Exactly.
The notion that he's like relative to his position, Abdul Carter is arguably bigger than Travis Hunter is. Travis Hunter is like 188, I think, which is decent size, but he's in a position where guys are routinely, 210, 215 pounds. Nobody's calling I refute the notion that Travis Hunter is small as well. Yeah. But somebody was asking me on the forums today, asking about comparing him to Zay Flowers. Travis Hunter's 4 inches taller than Zay Flowers, but he's only about 6 pounds heavier. There are a lot of guys who are thicker, and maybe Travis Hunter will thicken up a little bit. To me, watching him at Pro Day, I was actually surprised at how broad he was in his upper body. I think he's always going to have those little legs. But to me, he doesn't strike me small. But if Abdul Carter's small, then Travis Hunter's small, and you're screwed either way. And you're talking about, comparing that to a quarterback who's small and Shedeur Sanders. Although I will say his legs were thicker than I thought they were. He's not a big guy either. So no. Either they're all small or none of them are small. Personally, I don't think any of them are all that small relative to what the team needs them to do. Abdul Carter is more than fine. He was able to compete without issue against 330-pound tackles. And again, I think he will, even if it's just 5 pounds, I think it will naturally put on some weight.
To knock a couple of these out real quick, Carter's best position in the Brown scheme would be more of a JOK role with an emphasis on attacking. False. The value at edge is much, 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 much greater than linebacker. Far greater. So if you can get him to be an elite edge, it is a premier position, while linebacker is not. Not saying it's not useful, but it is more valuable to play edge. The pick has been made, and it will be Mason Graham. Mason Graham, I do not believe, is in the same tier as the guys we're talking about. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I love what he does, but his production isn't there, and his arms are short, which is potentially going to limit what he can offer you as a pass rusher. His tape is absolutely rock solid, but
we're talking about a different,
again,
there are a few guys take in this draft that are elite players, and Graham is the next.
Yeah, they're two.
If you trade back and get him, you're taking a hit.
Yeah, I mean, and I've said this all along. People are like, "Well, trade down." You have to get value that's equivalent to whether it's Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. You have to get that much worth of picks to move down, because ultimately, if you move down and get a pretty good player and some picks that may or may not pan out, if they all hit, great. But if you trade down, we've seen this. Another guy who was injured before the draft, Julio Jones in 2011, 6th pick, discovered at the combine to have a broken foot, had to have surgery, screw inserted into his foot, out 8 weeks. The Browns traded out, and it was a great trade in terms of the value and everything else. They just didn't make the picks pay off with Phil Taylor, and then they traded the 3rd-round pick that became Justin Houston. Meanwhile, the Falcons got a Julio Jones with the broken foot and all, and they're going to retire his jersey number. So that is sort of the the opportunity there that's for when you are picking this high and the pressure is there to get that type of impact.
Yeah, there's while this isn't the greatest draft of all time, there are the elite players at the top of it. You're in the range to get one. Trading down, you are missing out on one of those players. And I think
combine weight was 188. That's deceptive. Yeah, I have I'm gonna look. I think Travis Hunter's phenomenal. I'm gonna call bullshit on both of their weights at the combine.
What?
Here's what happens. Because and I saw this happen live. And I asked it, and they did not weigh in or measure. So what guys have done in the past is they have overhydrated themselves to make weight at the combine, then proceeded to either do nothing, or in those days, you would have time between you when you weighed to when you tested. So you would have a little bit easier time to sort of remove the extra weight. So both Shedeur and Travis Hunter both weigh in at combine and do nothing. Neither one weighed in at pro day. That immediately makes me question the validity of that weight. And it may be, he's 185. So what? But it's still, why do it? Whereas Shedeur, I'm a little bit more concerned about his weight. Again, he was bigger. Looking at him in short and although a very baggy shirt, which I also thought was a little bit deceptive.
Is there a massive discrepancy between guys' pro day weigh-ins and their combine weigh-ins or whatever?
It happens, yes. That's absolutely been a thing in the past where guys have supercharged their weight at the combine and then sort of hit it for the sake of testing. And it's been notorious among quarterback prospects. There have been a lot of guys who cheated up their weight.
Sure, and maybe they do. But I think my evaluation of Shedeur has nothing to do with his weight, really.
No, I have a list
evaluation. And my evaluation of Hunter doesn't really either. So, there's this. Okay. Carter, I just can't, I think this is blatantly false. Carter is better suited for a 3-4. I just heard somebody talking about today that the Browns are ideal spot for him because they can simply put him in the Schwartz scheme where he can just play downhill in a 4-3 is a simpler answer for teams that are a 3-4 and want to make him a fit. I think he fits better in the 4-3 wide 9 than any place else. So
it's antiquated. It's antiquated. To look at things in that framework. And the bottom line is, if your defensive coordinator can't make Abdul Carter work, it's time for a new defensive coordinator because he's a moron. But to address the point directly, there's all this, Von Miller was a 3-4 outside linebacker. Well, he was also a 4-3 defensive end, and they ran an over scheme. Nolan Smith plays in a 4-3. Cliff Averill played for Jim Schwartz at 250 pounds in his scheme. Put him in a wide 9. No one's going to care about it. If you line him up in a 5, you're an idiot. Put him in a wide 9. You can dictate the action with the speed and angles and cause problems that way and generate momentum to build up power to use it. But to dismiss the player and say he can only operate in a 3-4 when the league is based in nickel, everything is a sub package anymore, is silly. It's just so out of date. And I'm so tired of the 3-4-4-3 crap because I've been listening to this debate for 20 some years when it actually mattered. And teams it took years for them to transition from one to the other because of how they did it. Because everybody tried to recreate the Patriots old scheme where they had these 300-pound guys that had to be athletic enough to play defensive end. It's not how this thing works. If that was the case, why are the Browns even entertaining this notion? Why would they deal with all this stuff? They're not going to switch to a 3-4. It's so stupid. How does he hold up against the run? He chases it down really fast.
He's very good against the run. He's very good against the run. We're talking about the second pick in the draft. He's not going to be evaluated up there in her, people calling him a generational player if he can't play the run. We aren't that short-sighted, and I don't think the evaluators are either.
How many tackles for loss did he have? 23?
23 tackles for loss. Yeah.
Even with a bum shoulder, he was dominated against the run. And somebody weeks ago, somebody was trying to show me the Ohio State tape and say he was a non-factor on the last drive of the game. Nowhere else in the game, just the last drive. And I actually looked it up, and they were running away from him. They were literally running plays away from him because they wanted to avoid him. That's apparently how bad he is at holding up at the point of attack. Like, it's stupid. If he's that bad against the run, why didn't more teams run at him?
Yeah.
Why are they running away from him? Why wouldn't you just run at him every time? Notre Dame was apparently stupid. They should have just run right at him, and they didn't because they couldn't get it to work. So it's just nonsense. Again, he has to prove that he can, against NFL guys, he has to prove he can sort of navigate that issue. But here's the problem. And one of the things that sort of feeds into Jim Schwartz's scheme, he's not asking for guys to sort of plug. He wants guys who attack, guys who force the opponent to react to them, get into the backfield and cause problems. He's not sitting there going, hey, and then there's part of the reason I think Dalvin Tomlinson is gone. He's a very good player. I just don't think he's a fit for what Schwartz wants to do. He wants guys who can knife into the backfield and cause issues. Abdul Carter is absolutely tailor-made for that type of system. So, no, that's nonsense. But he can do things. He can do linebacker things. Absolutely. And I've said that he could be a 250-some pound JOK type element because he can be such a excellent secondary contain or spy or just play linebacker. There are numerous examples of him dropping into coverage and making plays on the ball. He obviously played 2 years of off-ball linebacker. It's not like he can't do it. So that it becomes another way to utilize him. So if the Browns play,
it all ends up looking the same anyways. Is the greater
right.
point? It all, yeah. I mean,
if the Browns were to get, like, let's say the Baltimore Ravens want to load up and play super huge and go 3 tight ends in this whole thing, which is part of the reason the Browns used to have Sione Takitaki run. They wanted that big Mike that could come in. The Browns could just have Isaiah McGuire play base end, Myles Garrett on the other side, and put Abdul Carter as an off-ball linebacker to give them extra size and maintain the juice to then go and chase down Lamar Jackson as needed.
Steve Kramer wants to know, and then we got to get to the next video because I really want to get to this exercise tonight. So we're going to get to it. So we're going to keep it moving here. But obviously Carter is who Pete wants. Does he fully believe the Browns pick him? What percentage in his eyes do the Browns pick him at 2?
I don't know about percentages. I think he's going to be the pick by virtue of history and everything else. So 51%, if that makes you feel better. Those are the 2.
So it's just a slight lean towards him?
I guess. I mean, until they make the pick, like, I can only be so sure. The only thing I was 100% sure, and I've been this way for months, is it was never going to be Shedeur Sanders.
It's not going to be Shedeur. Yeah.
Totally vindicated on that. The rest of this, we'll see.
Yeah.
History says defensive end, edge rusher. But, if the Browns make the conclusion, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski go, we can do this many things with him, and go, we can't help ourselves. We think he's going to be sort of that, the Michael Jordan type element, to put it that way, then I can see them doing it. But ultimately, history would say, take the edge rusher. He's going to have the bigger impact. It's more difficult to avoid him if you're the opponent, but we'll see.
We keep bringing up Carter's red flags. We discussed his foot injury earlier. What other red flags are we talking about?
They're not.
There are no other red flags.
Unless you're talking about him beating up the tow truck driver, which I've heard multiple people cite that as a positive.
Yeah, it's
so
not.
I don't care. Like that. It's not. Of all the things, like, if I'm comparing that to Mike Green's red flags, I will take Abdul Carter's red flags and have no problem. I don't know how many tow truck drivers are in the Browns building on any given day that are going to be a real problem for him.
Thanks, World's Fastest. Appreciate that. All right, let's go on to the next video here.
Well, if you want, late guys. I
haven't heard anything. Cam Ward's likely going 1, right? We think that's going to be the thing. Okay, so let's assume that Mike's nodding for the radio audience. Then, Mike, what on earth do the Browns do at 2?
I'm intrigued. I know Andrew very well, and I really know Kevin Stefanski well, another Philly guy. And they're both highly, highly intelligent in any industry. And so here we are. They traded for Kenny Pickett from the Eagles. And I'm sitting here going, they have to take a quarterback at 2, right? But if Cam Ward's gone and they don't have a grade on Shador that justifies anywhere near that, you can easily sit there in a behind closed doors and go, look, we already have our developmental young quarterback. He was a first round pick in 22. His name's Kenny Pickett. So why don't we continue to work with this kid? He's got a little bit of NFL experience. He was a first round pick for a reason. And we think we had a better grade on him coming out than we do on Shador or Jackson Dart or any of these guys. So he can be our young developmental guy, but here's the caveat. Now we got to go find a veteran. And Aaron Rodgers, if he goes to Pittsburgh like we all think, at the end of the day, what does that leave for a quality veteran starter? To me, it's Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr. Now, when you look at those two, nothing's coming out of New Orleans that would suggest they would allow him to go. He's their starter this year. You look at Atlanta, it's a different conversation. Kirk Cousins wants out. Atlanta is willing to let him go, assuming they get what they want in return. I'm assuming on top of that, Atlanta wants to wait post June 1st because then they can let the salary cap mitigate over a 2-year period instead of 1. So it's a little bit of a quarterback roulette game because after those 2 quarterbacks, and keep in mind, they both have no trade clauses. If you don't get either one of them, then we're in the Carson Wentz, Ryan Tannehill, Joe Flacco world. And you got to be careful because I'm not sure you want Kenny Pickett under center week 1 in Cleveland. And by the way, you'll be calling that game, Andrew.
And it could be against Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you never know. It's fascinating. Let's say they don't go Shador, all right? And the Browns are in Colorado right now. Pro Day is tomorrow there. Yep. Expected to meet, as they've said. They said it this week in Florida with both Travis Hunter and Shador Sanders. Let's say Shador gets to 9, Mike, and hypothetically the Saints turn in the card. Well, then does Derek Carr want out? We already know that Kirk Cousins would like a little bit of clarity. I don't want to go to a team that's going to take a quarterback in the first round. I might want to wait until after the draft. But after the draft, there may not be a job that then is open at that point. So I'm with you. It's kind of a game of roulette. And there are a lot of Browns fans that say we'll trade up to 1. Well, the Titans may not want to trade. Everyone has a price. But, Mike, we did the research, and Jack Andrade and I both dove into it. Jack Andrade, great NFL researcher, handles the draft. There has never been a trade from 2 to 1, ever. There's no precedent. There's been a trade from 3 to 1, but that was 1975 when the Falcons flipped with Baltimore, the Colts, and moved up 3 to 1 for George Kuhn's and all-pro right tackle. That was it, 1 for 1. So when people say, well, the Titans won 2 1s, I say that's absurd. But when you're on the clock, if they're not entirely into Cam Ward, maybe it's doable. But this idea that you could just flip them a 3 and get there, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't see it in any way, shape, or form on the clock or elsewise. I don't think people want to panic on the clock. That decision's going to be made with your owner. When you're picking number 1, your owner's sitting in there going, what are we doing? So it's the GM, the head coach, the owner. They're all going to have that decided well before they put a card in the first night of the draft.
And that owner.
All right. Is this a fair criticism, Pete, about the Ward stuff? Okay. I don't know if this is fair or not. You tell me. But I was thinking about it today. And I've been getting a lot of grief for my whining about the quarterback situation in Cleveland. That's fine. And I understand. There's a lot of offseason left, right? But do you think it's fair to think that if the Browns love Cam Ward, that they should have tried to trade with the Titans much, much, much earlier in the process before we got this far along? Like, should they have seen it coming that far out because at some point they probably could have gotten up there for a much less price. Like, should your scouts and evaluators have seen that far out? Listen, there's a big gap between Ward and Sanders. This is how we feel. If we want to get our guy this year, and we're going to be up there too, we need to make this before it becomes clear to everybody.
I think it's unlikely that the Titans would have been willing to make that trade that quickly, for the simple reason that they changed their front office, and when you do that, you're at a bit of a handicap in terms of the scouting process. So if you're the Titans, it is to your benefit to wait as long as possible before making a deal. Is it possible that the Browns could have shocked them with a deal that was good enough for them to take, but not as much as they're reportedly asking for now? I suppose. I just think it's like a keyhole shot at that point. I think more than likely, if the Titans are even remotely serious as a franchise, they would have said, we're just going to wait, see where we end up, and go from there, because it is the first pick in the draft.
Because they were very wishy-washy early on.
Well, I think, that's not untrue. That's our reporting, that they weren't sure what they wanted to do, and that's part of the problem. I think that's why they weren't really interested in making a trade, but it also led to a moving target in terms of dealing with them. In other words, without, I can't say this specifically, but it would be like calling them and going, we'll give you, say, a couple third-round picks to move up. Yeah. And they're like, let me get back to you tomorrow. And then they come back tomorrow and go, no, we need a 1. And then you call them back, they call you back in a week or so and go, what about a 2 and a 3? And then, you sort of get in this whole thing where at some point you don't know, you can't get them nailed down on anything, to the point where it becomes sort of counterproductive and it's wasting your time, to the point where it's gotten to now where they're basically waiting for a Godfather offer. And it was probably always going to be like that. So I think that's really hard to sort of do. And I think ultimately this is where it was always going to end up. Just the amount of pressure on it. And if for no other reason, if you're the GM of the Titans, they got rid of a good GM for you. So, you got to get this right, because, they got rid of Rand Carthon, who I thought did a nice job for the most part. So that's a tough spot to be in when you're saying Rand Carthon didn't win enough.
Yeah. I mean, you could see why they would just be like, listen, we're not sure yet. We've got to wait. You know what I mean? We don't know.
Yeah. I don't hear you.
Yep, I accidentally hit mute. My bad. I was saying, I know they, as a GM, they basically can't. We understand why they'd be like, oh, we gotta wait. You know what I mean? We don't know yet. But like at the same time, I would say that as any team or GM and your scouting department, part of the draft process has to be like, I think part of evaluating what you do during the draft process and how you approach the draft has to become like projecting from month to month how teams are going to feel about certain players.
Sure. But I mean, like, here again,
right? Like projecting how the process plays out should be part of like your approach before the season begins.
On some level, yeah. I mean that's part of it, but I don't know how granular.
I'm not claiming that they did anything wrong in this situation. I'm just saying moving forward, it's an interesting thought, right? Like, no matter where you're placed, no matter what NFL team it is, if you think that you can gain an advantage by knowing how certain teams are going to feel about a certain player a couple of months from now, that gives you an advantage as you go into draft season.
Well, I mean, I think that's the Jerry Jeudy deal. I think that's the Amari Cooper deal.
Yeah, it's a
in a
great
nutshell,
point.
where those are examples where you were able to work that situation in a way that was productive. But that is sort of the reputation of Andrew Berry, that they're diligent in terms of due process and doing all the homework and everything else. And, the whole leaving no stone unturned type thing.
Colin Farrell.
Look, I really like Mike Mayock.
I love
I miss him on TV. John Gruden made those first round picks. Mike Mayock got overpowered and did not get to make the picks he wanted. And if you go back and you look, this is a classic situation that happens for some of these guys. The first round, train wreck. You get to like the third and fourth round, all of a sudden, you see where the actual scouting and the work is done, and they did pretty good.
Yeah.
That's not to suggest that Mike Mayock was going to be a great GM by any stretch.
Didn't they take Akuda as well with him?
No, that was Detroit.
Or was it Detroit?
They took Brandon Jacobs, they took Cleveland Farrell, and they took Jonathan Abram, the safety out of Mississippi State that year. And it is reminiscent of Mike Pettin and Ray Farmer taking Justin Gilbert, Johnny Manziel, that type of stuff, where it was compromise for the get along type, go along to get along type stuff. And then the Browns had to sort of rally in those drafts. They got Joe Batonio, they got Chris Kirksey. They did better in the later rounds. The top of the draft, too many voices got involved, and it became this nonsense. And Johnny Manziel was obviously an owner sort of driven element to it, but they didn't even meet Justin Gilbert before the draft. Like, that is what that Raiders situation reeked of with those picks. And Cleveland Farrell certainly didn't work out. And that first round was disastrous. They had three first round picks, and Brandon Jacobs the only thing they really got out of any of them. I will always have a soft spot for Mike Mayock because he loves this stuff in a way that few people do. Like he back when he was on NFL Network, I don't know that he does it so much now. He would go to all the All-Star games and be down there on the sideline watching practices, and he will talk to people, talk to whoever wants to talk football with him. As far as the Raiders situation, I think he got a raw deal in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think so too. He did get fired for 1825. He did. All right. I'm going to throw in this video real quick. Then I want to get to what's going to be a fun video. The UCS one, SS one is really fun tonight. So I do want to show Mary Kay here with Tom Withers on 92.3 today.
Let's just get it out of the way. It's Travis Hunter, right? It's all over and done with.
Of course. It's that simple. No problem. No, it's just funny because the national media 2 weeks ago, it's Abdul Carter. It's absolutely Abdul Carter. Now the it pick, of course, is Travis Hunter. And it might turn out to be that way, but I'm just still not 100% sold on that. I haven't committed to that yet. Actually, as I leave the showcase, which I was honored to be able to go to, and I had a great time there, I come away with it still thinking the same thing that I have for the past couple of months, and that is see quarterback, get quarterback. The Browns have the number 2 overall pick in this draft and a clear shot at one of the two best quarterbacks in this draft, and I'm just trying not to overthink it too much.
I hope for her sake she's betting. What I saw at one point was plus 1,500 on Shedeur Sanders at 2. Because if she's right, she's going to be set if she makes a big bet on that. And
have the odds changed in regards to, with all this talk, have they changed towards Hunter at all?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
You don't buy into that? Vegas knows, Pete.
Here's what I will tell you. What are odds designed to do? Get people to bet.
Make you bet, yeah.
So, they could end up, they're trying to get, when they move the line like that, they now invite another whole set of people to come in and bet and think it's Travis Hunter. And in some ways, it sort of covers them against all the people who bet Abdul Carter if ends up being the pick, or vice versa. But betting certainly Vegas has an excellent track record on getting these things right. However, betting odds are designed to get people to bet. But again, it does stand out when you see things like plus 1,500 for Shedeur Sanders at 2.
No doubt,
because that is a substantial payout.
I didn't know it was that long. That's
it depends on the book, but I know I saw one place that was plus 1,500. I've seen some other places like plus 550, whatever else.
Do you know what their odds are at 3 at this point? Has Vegas moved up the idea that he's going to go to New York?
Substantially lower. They are moving in terms of odds. They are moving a whole lot. They are banking, or I should say, setting the odds to be far more to the Saints at this point. Which, to me, if it plays out the way. Whether it's Sanders or Carter, irrelevant at that point. But if it does work out and Sanders goes 9, I think the Browns are really happy with that outcome.
Yeah, well, then Carr becomes more realistic at that point, right?
Well, it just opens up a whole lot of options. Yes, Derek Carr theoretically becomes an option on one hand, but also the nightmare scenario for people. Good Lord, the amount of people asking about the stupid hypotheticals. Well, what if the Giants take Sanders at 3 and the Saints take Dart at 9 and the Steelers take?
You're gonna hate
the
this.
Steelers draft 2 quarterbacks at 21, and that type of thing. So if I believe this for a while that the 3 picks were going to go Ward. I still think it's going to be Ward, Carter, Hunter. But even if it's Ward, Hunter, Carter, that's still a big W if you're the Browns and you're sitting and go, that sort of sets us on a path to reality in terms of where the quarterbacks are being valued. Even if Sanders goes 9, you're still happy with that. Now, and there's not, I don't think that's a given either, but let's say because if they pass on him, then you're sitting, everybody in the Browns front office is doing a big old fist pump, because that means all those quarterbacks are potentially going to be there at least at 21. And you're going to have an opportunity to get them sort of at a value that makes more sense for you. But if even if Shedeur goes at 9, and if you like Dart, if you like Milroe, then you've got a chance to maybe get those at a more realistic price, where you don't feel like you're overcommitting to get them. Then that's a good situation. I still believe that's the top 3 will not include Sanders, and that's not a slight against Sanders. That is a how good those other 3 prospects are vacuum. That there's a tier below where now whether you like Mason Graham or Tyler Warren or whoever the hell else it is, there's a clear line of delineation after those top 3 guys go off the board. And Sanders fits into there. And at that point, now it becomes what teams really like, what teams really need a quarterback. And I think that is more of a reflection of reality, as opposed to, it's not a slight against Sanders by any stretch. Some of this was a product of hype, and some of this is a product of quarterbacks and how in some drafts, and this certainly has happened, where they do go super early and we see a ton of them come off the board. Or there's years, Malik Willis and Geno Smith drafts, for example, that where Geno Smith and Matt Barkley, I think that was 2011, were projected to go in the first round. Geno went in the second round. Matt Barkley went in the 4th round. Or the Malik Willis thing where he went wherever he went, 3rd round, I think. And I'm not in no way, shape, or form am I suggesting that Sanders is going to fall that far. I don't think that's a realistic scenario, but it is more of an accurate appraisal to where he is. Again, I've said 2nd round pick value for him in Dart. I think Milroe, I don't think he's a 2nd round value necessarily based on what he is, but I understand that that's the price I think he's going to cost at least. Based on Based on the fact that
upside.
he's invited to the draft, the NFL seems to think there's a good chance he's going to the first round. So
Yeah.
we'll
I think
see
it's
where
possible.
that takes up.
The line's at 3.5, perfectly 3.5 quarterbacks in the first round. So it's right there. You know what I mean? They got, Milrow will probably be that, I would assume would be that, that pivot point for Vegas. All right. With the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, this is draft day trade scenarios they pulled and went over. So I want to get our reaction first to the trades, and then we'll listen to some of theirs. It was kind of a fun exercise, or maybe it's not, be considering the what you just said about the ridiculous.
No, this is my life and Ask the Insiders right now. It's just is me and Lane answering questions about, well, what if this happens? Like, listen, get Andrew Berry on the phone and have him tell me what to tell these people, because that's literally who they need to talk to on some of this stuff, because you just can't know. There's only so much you can do.
All right.
Reading, we're going to do some draft day trades here in a sec. But first, March Madness real what they talked about the number 2 pick the Browns hold at length. We have dissected what Shedeur Sanders could do for Cleveland, what Travis Hunter could do for Cleveland, what Cam Ward, what Abdul Carter, you name the player, we've dissected it. And recently, in the last couple of days, probably the last week, there have been some mock drafts that have come out. Bill Barnwell does one where he goes through an exercise of every pick has to be traded. So the Browns had to trade out from 2, and other teams had to trade. They couldn't make a selection at their spot. So I found 6 trades that I thought were at least reasonable and worth discussing that we could discuss today to figure out, sure, they're hypothetical, but if they were real, would they make sense for the Cleveland Browns? So I want you guys to put on your Andrew Berry hat, and we're going to run through some of these trades. I'll tell you who came up with the trade and whether or not you think it is a deal worth pursuing or accepting if it was on the table for the Cleveland Browns.
Does any of these have anything to do with Joe Milton?
No, Joe Milton was traded to the Dallas Cowboys today.
Yeah, Steve Becker was really worked up about that this morning.
I know. So was Darryl Ryder.
Yes, he was.
Hoyer.
Oh, my God.
Hoyer said he liked him more than any of the quarterbacks in this draft. And then we asked Todd McShay about that, and McShay said he loved Brian Hoyer, but that was an asinine take.
What round was Joe Milton drafted in?
6th.
I approve Todd McShay.
Darryl Ryder was worked up about this?
Yes, he was.
Very worked up.
Yes, he was very worked up.
Ryder didn't like
What is he worked up about?
He thought the Browns
video
should
is
made
awesome.
a trade.
I know.
He was a 6th-round pick last year. I was correct.
He played
Are
one
people
game.
really worked up because this guy played one good game at the end of the year? Is that what it is?
Against the Bills' backups.
Sure is.
Oh, my God. All right, come on. Go ahead.
All right, so let's get to these trades. This first trade, Bolt, comes from a friend of yours.
Oh.
A friend of mine, at least online. I don't know him personally, but Cleve TA, friend of the program.
Okay.
Put this trade out there. He said, if the Browns go with Hunter early, this could be a spot to trade up to try and get the quarterback of their choice later. The proposed trade from Cleve TA was with Arizona. In this proposed trade, the Browns would get their first-round pick, number 16 in the draft, in exchange for Greg Newsome, the 33rd pick, 104, and number 200. Now, mind you...
All right. As he's going to say, taking away the whatever, is this realistic or not? Would you do this?
Yes, because it allows me to keep both the 67 and 94, which I think is critical in this. And even though I have a higher opinion of Greg Newsome, the Browns don't.
Or at least a fan base. You don't think the Browns do either?
Well, they floated him in trades for like the past seemingly 4 years. He's always, if we get the right price. Now, I don't know what the value they have for him is. I know Jack Duffin sort of put it as a 5th or 4th rounder, maybe. So in that scenario, I would make that move. And you're making a hell of a climb there to get 16. So Cleve TA has a decent value on Greg Newsome in this scenario. It would not surprise. Let's put it this way: if I was to tweak this trade a little bit, I would expect that somewhere in there, Barry would try to get, 257th pick or something out of this, and so to get some sort of trade swap. But other than that, done.
Yeah. And with one, it doesn't have to be one of the higher ones. Like to your point, if you get a throwaway pick or something, you know, the way they've drafted corners, I've always liked the idea of this draft potentially moving Newsome. While I do agree with you that he provides them value because of his versatility and the issues they have with injuries in your corners, right? Because of how much he's being paid this year.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah. The $13 million on the 5th year of his contract. And if you don't intend to extend him, then draft night might be a good time to move him and get a pick in return that you can then take his replacement with. You know what I mean? Or flip.
I get it in theory. I do not like this corner draft at all. That's my only issue with the idea of swapping.
There's a couple guys I like,
but like the DBs in general, this is not the class in my view. I don't like the safeties all that much. There's a couple guys I like, but man, it is rough.
Getting to 16 does get you in front of 21, which feels like the pivot point in the first round. The Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, if the guy you want gets past 9, you have to start working the phones. Now, that doesn't mean you necessarily have to pick them in front of the Steelers, but you at least have to get, figure out the lay of the land. Obviously, in some level, they've done this. Who am I drafting at 15?
Who you drafting in this scenario? Who you drafting with that 16th pick?
Oh, if you're asking me, I would take Dart, which, yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't like Dart.
No, I like Dart. I like Sanders considerably more.
Oh, well, that's an option too. I like Dart. He's QB2 for me. My big thing with Dart versus Sanders is Sanders has a number of things he does that are at a higher level than Dart. He also has a lot of things that you have to fix. Dart does a lot of things reasonably well. He's Mr. Average. Like, he's got a whole bunch of bars that are like this far out, whereas Sanders is a little bit more high end and low end type thing. And I think there are certain things you can't really evaluate with Dart based on what he's done to this point that raise real questions. But I also think he's got the least amount to fix and the most you can sort of teach him and feel good about. And ultimately, the Browns are going to have to ascertain that. But I like what Dart brings to the table in that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm trading this eye, that's what I'd take. Yeah.
Yeah.
Answers whether you take this or not. I took these trades from someone else. Let's not argue if it's okay. This is too much, too little, whatever. Just if this was on the table and you were Andrew Berry.
Yeah, no.
Do they have two?
I wasn't even gonna go there.
104 is what? They have 2 4th-round picks.
They have 2/3 and 2/4, to my knowledge. They have 5 in the first 105.
So 5 in the worst. Okay, all right.
So let me ask. So you said in this exercise they took Travis Hunter at 2 already?
Yes.
Correct.
I'd make that trade.
I guess it depends. I mean, if Shedeur Sanders is still available at 16,
if Shedeur, Dart,
but then again, if I'm going to take Shedeur
Dart,
at 16,
or Shook is there, I'd take that trade.
That's right around the point where
at least
one team I talked to believes Dart will go.
Okay.
He's right in that range.
I mean, so essentially, to move up 17 spots from the beginning of the second to the middle of the third, which is a significant jump.
That's a significant
He's
jump.
saying you give up an early 4th-round pick, a late draft pick, and Greg Newsome.
If the Cardinals take that, I would take that.
I don't think the Cardinals would take that.
I don't either.
No, I don't think so.
You would need to attach a future one, I think, and I don't think the Browns would have interest in doing that. And I don't think Greg Newsome has a ton of value.
No.
I don't think they would need to attach a future one to do that. But I would say this, that I do think teams value Newsome differently than maybe the Browns do around the NFL because of his versatility.
Yeah, that's the question. The Cardinals must really like Greg Newsome in that scenario.
Yes.
But this idea that the Browns have to give up a first-round pick to get to 16 is crazy. Like,
and you would never do that.
If you subscribe, look, on some level, everything is about the pick is worth as much as somebody's willing to pay for it. And if there's a market and there's competition and everything else, then those things can fluctuate. but you're not getting into the top 10. You are getting to 16.
Yeah.
And,
if you wanted to get into the top 10 to take a quarterback, then you might as well just take him at 2. Like, if you're going to give up a first-round pick to move up to get the quarterback, then you should have taken him at 2.
Well, the only caveat to that would be you're the Houston Texans and you took both Will Anderson and CJ Stroud. Like,
Sure.
I get you can make the case, but regardless, it shouldn't take a 1 to get there. Like the scenario that, if you believe in the value calculators and stuff like that, 67 and 104 get you way up the board.
Yeah.
But the value of those picks, outside of the top 10 drops off dramatically. Now, it doesn't mean, like, obviously 16 is worth quite a bit. You're giving up all this to get there, but and future picks could theoretically be involved, but the first round pick, no, absolutely not. No. I don't think that's realistic, because on some of this, a lot of this comes down to where's the talent drop off for teams. How are they valued? Because the joke is that, like, or the Daniel Jeremiah was tweeting about this. Some teams are saying that, like, they only have this many first round picks, and agents are saying, well, there's like a 67 first round picks. If the Cardinals are sitting there going, we can get a player we feel just as good about at 33 as at 16, then you're sitting there going, hey, we can get an equivalent talent we feel really good about and these other picks. And at that point, you're sitting there going, why would we do this? Because, again, it's the difference of what, in this case, whether it's Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, whatever, what are they worth? In the same way that I'm saying that the Browns trading down from 2, it is what is Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter worth? It's significantly different. So I think the calculus that it's going to cost that much is mistaken in terms of what it would cost.
Yes, and ultimately,
I will say that it would be absolutely malpractice to give up a first round pick next year to get the quarterbacks in this class, other than Cam Ward.
Agreed. Especially after you pass, because you're then assuming that you're going. The only way that works out is if you win. You're like in the top half of, like, you win your division or whatever, and you're picking in the high 20s next year.
Right? Yeah. I mean, but if the Browns can't make that guarantee,
you can't.
They could be because they could be picking in the top 10 again, and that would be ridiculous, hemorrhaging value. And the one thing that I know about how the Browns view their situations is they were not happy to be out of the draft in the way they were for 3 years. They are not interested in just getting back out of the draft again. And that would be, obviously, if you give up at 1, you are doing that again.
There are playing the draft board, like the way you were saying, playing the draft board for a team and when you're willing to trade back is about those little pockets of, we view these guys the same, right? And if you find yourself in a position where there is a group of those guys that you're like, listen, and we can trade back to what they want, and we're going to get that same pocket of player, that's when you do the trade back, right? That's when it makes sense to take the asset. And then there is that pivot point always with that as well, where you have to evaluate where does that point change in the draft as you're playing the board, which is always interesting.
I assume Cleve TA has done his homework on this, and the Cardinals are pick deprived, and that's part of the thought process here. It's the same reason I've sort of picked out the Minnesota Vikings as a potential target. I know there are a couple other teams that don't have a lot of draft assets where that's part of the appeal for them moving back is they get to refill
You still there? Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
You froze up on me. All right. Atlanta only has 4 picks. They need some picks. That's true. Okay.
Yeah, they're one of them.
All right, here we go.
But in theory, if we're just going based on it, but yes, I would do it, certainly, as is. I think the Browns would probably have to give up a little more.
You need to find a team that's trying to get out of the first round for whatever reason. And I don't think that the Cardinals fit that bill.
No, probably not. Who would fit that bill?
I think Washington would get out at 29. I mean, it's much lower down.
Right, yeah.
I think Washington makes a lot of sense for the Browns. If there's a quarterback that they want to get the fifth year of control at the bottom, I would circle Washington.
I know this may not be
the team
you want to trade with.
Go ahead and pause it. I understand what he's
Bengals
talking
are picking right around there.
He's talking about if the Browns want to sneak into the bottom of the round to pick a quarterback to get the fifth-year option. That Washington.
Me too, but the Eagles make more sense.
Theoretically, but I mean, they might be one of those teams is more willing to deal. So I understand what he's saying from that standpoint. But if you're talking about trading up to go get the quarterback, they are not, because 29 is unrealistic.
Right.
At worst, you have to get. At worst, you theoretically have to get ahead of 26 because that's the Rams.
Yeah, I would just think that the relationship you have with the Eagles. I mean, your Jim's brother's there. He was there. They're one pick ahead of you. You'd have to give up a seventh or sixth to move up one spot to get that fifth-year deal. That seems like the more appropriate option. And they don't lose a player they wanted.
Ultimately, that comes down to relationships and knowing what's out there.
All right, here we go.
No, that ain't happening. They're not going to get
the best edge rusher available.
Minnesota potentially is a trade down. They're at 25 or 26.
24.
I could see the Rams
24.
right in that same range, picking up a couple extra draft picks.
Right, but I brought up the Bengals because they're higher, but Jason's probably right.
Yeah.
The Bengals don't usually trade out of the first round, but they need a couple more draft picks, so I think maybe they would do
trade
that.
With the Browns either.
Go ahead.
All right, this second trade comes from ESPN. It was a roundtable article on deals they thought would be fun. In this scenario,
it's dangerous.
The Browns trade out of the number 2 pick. They trade number 2 to Carolina. Carolina would draft Travis Hunter in this scenario. In exchange for number 2, the Browns get Carolina's first pick in this draft, number 8, their second round pick in this draft, number 39, and a first round pick in next year. So in this scenario, the Browns would have.
Would you take it?
That's tempting. Let's put this way. That's the type of offer you would need to move. Like that, like when people are talking about move down, pick up extra picks, it's not a third round pick. It's that where you get 39, you get another first round pick. And if you're saying Carolina, I don't know if they're going to be that good. That could be.
They're not going to be.
So that's sort of a coin flip to me, because the question is who am I taking at 8?
Tet?
Maybe. Because I think what ultimately where I get is wanting to trade down again, and I don't love that.
Maybe.
So
sure.
The answer is probably I just don't know who I would take, because it might be Jalen Walker in that scenario, or one of the offensive tackles or something like that. I don't love that scenario, even though it is. I'm not taking it. If you're making me take a tight end, it's not going to be the one you want. I'm taking Colton Loveland, and I'm laughing at everybody else. I do not want Tyler Warren. Do not
want Warren?
No. He profiles he can be great. I'm not gonna say he can't be, but he profiles a hell of a lot more like Tyler Hendershot than he does an all-time great. Or Peyton Hendershot, whatever Hendershot it is.
I tend to agree with you though. If you're at 8, 15 doesn't feel that much different.
Yep. So that's where it's tough. Like, I would probably be perfectly content with Tet McMillan at that point. I don't know if the Browns love Tet McMillan like that because of what I know they want at wide receiver. But yeah, I mean, I think that would be enough where you have to take it. It'd be really difficult not to, because you got to feel really good about who you're taking at 8, and then getting that 39th pick is a huge relief.
Huge.
In terms of that. Because theoretically, the Browns could then, 8th pick, they might just say, screw it, we're taking Dart or Shador or whoever it is.
Yeah.
And
well,
I still don't love that, but I
don't like that because I don't like that idea, because at that point you have a future pick now. So getting up to get whoever you want and potentially a top 10 pick, probably a top 10 with Carolina. So you've been, we talked about kicking the can a year or two. This is that reality coming true where you have the assets to get whoever you want at the top of next year's draft, quarterback wise, with 2 high ones potentially, or hopefully not that high of a one, but a middle one and then a high one with Carolina's 1. Why take quarterback at 8 this year? Then you're just giving that too much of a commitment when you can go get the guy you really want next year.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that is true. It's tough. I think you have to take it. I just don't love my options at 8th pick. Though I might just take Colton Loveland and be done with it.
Yeah. But I would have a hard time not taking that just because of the potential to go get your franchise quarterback in next year's class with Carolina's 1.
8, 33, and 39, 3 picks in the top 40, and then another pick in the 2026 NFL draft.
I hate it.
Yeah. I don't hate it, but tell me why you guys hate it.
I don't hate it.
I'm
not going to say that I hate it. I wouldn't do it.
Go ahead.
You're right. I don't hate it. Yeah. I wouldn't do it. Because I think because you're giving up talent. Like, okay, in this scenario, you said you're giving up Travis Hunter, who people saying is the best player in this draft. Like, if you at 2, the thing is there are quote unquote can't miss prospects. You literally are getting the best because some people don't even view Cam Ward as the best prospect in this draft. So if he's going to go 1, that means you still got guys that should come in and be ready to play and contribute right away. And I don't understand why you would move out of that to get somebody now at the 8th pick who is not up to that standard.
That's right.
It makes no sense to me. You might as well just take the guy.
Right.
I understand that you're getting more picks and all those things, but it just doesn't make sense.
You have a chance to get an elite talent too. You don't.
Exactly. All the elite talent will probably be gone.
I hear you. You're not wrong. I agree with everything you said. You know why you consider it?
Because you need a lot of players.
Go ahead.
Because your owner just said it may take a year or 2 to find a franchise quarterback, and that 2026 pick gives you the ammunition to move up the board next year to go get the quarterback that you want.
But ultimately,
so you would do it.
Here's the problem with that, Jason.
You have to have the conversation.
Jason,
I'm not saying you do it. I know what you're going to say, but go ahead.
Teams don't trade out of 1 very often, and if there's only 1 guy next year, no matter how many draft picks,
you're right.
I know Adam Schefter said, well, if the Titans got blown away, they would trade. Well, then they don't totally.
Isn't the whole point that there isn't going to be just 1 guy next year, or isn't that what we're projecting?
Correct. I project there will be a lot of interesting guys. How many will, endure throughout this? I mean, are we going to have a situation? Because, going into the last drafts or going into this draft cycle, Carson Beck was the projected top quarterback and wasn't. But there are a lot of candidates that I think are going to be really good next year. Drew Lohr, I think, is going to maintain and be a top prospect almost regardless of what he does because so much of his draw is tools. But nevertheless, he's talented. I really like Cade Klubnik from Clemson. Nico, whatever his last name is at Tennessee, is going to be a true junior. Garrett Nussmeier, who was Dane Brugler's #1 quarterback through a whole lot of this process. Not my taste because he's more of a pocket guy, but he's like a bigger Shedeur Sanders who hasn't played enough football yet. Kevin Jennings from SMU should be interesting. I'm curious to see what the kid who went from USC to Louisville does. And then even though you sit there and you look at the Carson Beck element, you also got Cam Ward, who was projected 5th-round pick last year, who's now the top quarterback in the draft. So the opposite can also happen. But there are a lot of intriguing quarterbacks that can get good. The kid at Iowa State is going to be eligible next year. The kid at Arizona State, Levitt, who had a really good year, will be eligible next year. There's just a lot of quarterbacks who are going to be in the mix next year. And we'll see how many of them can sort of endure and progress and get there. But I don't think we're going to be in a situation where it's like this year.
What about the kid isn't it South Carolina? What's his name?
Oh, Lenore Sellers. Lenore Sellers will technically be draft eligible. He's got Cam Newton-like physical talent. I'm hoping for his sake that he stays in school until 2027 because he's only played the 1 year and he's very talented. But I'm hoping for the sake of developing as a quarterback, he stays 2 full years. One, South Carolina could use the break. And two, just to get all the experience. 2027 has the chance to be an extremely good draft class for quarterback, which obviously no one wants to really talk about if you're a Browns fan, because you would theoretically have Lenore Sellers, DJ Lagway from Florida, who will be a junior at that point, and then Arch Manning, where I expect he will be a consideration. If he can take the necessary steps, then that's what you're going to have. And that's sort of when I look at Lenore Sellers and I look at DJ Lagway and I look at some of these other quarterbacks and Jalen Milroe to a certain extent, that's where it really hard for me to buy into, whether it's Shedeur or, God forbid, Tyler Shuck. These guys are aliens relative to their physical abilities. They are just built different. You need, there's a feeling that you need to get one of those to compete in a meaningful way, because if they pan out the way you hope, obviously you can look at Anthony Richardson and go, well, that's the downside where it just doesn't work, or Justin Fields. But the talent and the physical capability are just, and I'm not, again, this is not advocating to wait until 2027. Absolutely not. What I am saying, though, is just when you're sort of looking at the landscape of talent at the position in the league and where it's going, the best of the best are going to have these overwhelmingly dominant traits that are going to allow them to be better than everybody else. And you're going to want one of those guys.
If I was going to push back on that, I would just say, what about Brock Purdy?
Yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing. You know what the owner of the 49ers said in regards to Brock Purdy? He, in his contract negotiation, he said something to the effect of, you take what Brock Purdy's done and then you add in Kyle Shanahan. That's not what you want to hear if you're talking about just your quarterback. And I think Brock Purdy's a good quarterback. I'm not going to sit here and go, he's not a good quarterback. But I do worry, if Brock Purdy is in Cleveland, I think Kevin Stefanski is a good coach, but he's not with what he had Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, the tight end who's really good, George Kittle, that he might not be that guy because he's not just an embarrassment of riches, or if he's
give him Travis Hunter, Jerry Jeudy.
Right. And that could be the case. I mean, what is he with the Patriots right now, who you might be playing for the Patriots this year on offense. So that's the pushback. And that's, you can win with Brock Purdy. They were this close to winning the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy.
Yes.
But the pushback I would have on that is NFC. All the AFC quarterbacks are aliens.
Yeah. My only point is, I guess you don't have to have an alien of a quarterback to win. I wouldn't call Joe Burrow an alien of a quarterback. He's just a good quarterback.
He is.
But he's not athletic. He's not an athletic specimen he's talking about.
He is.
He doesn't have a tremendous. He's not a freak.
He's not a freak athlete. No, but he is big. He's strong, and he's more athletic than people give him credit for. But yes, his superpower is in here.
It's processing. Yeah.
Yes, he is very, very, very good.
Saying.
Yes. Is that absolutely? But he's not 6'2", 200 pounds, and we're making excuses about his blocking, and not that I'm talking about anyone specifically.
No, nobody specific.
but that's the problem. Is
no, I get it.
That's I'm just saying, you don't want to exist in.
The athletic traits,
you're not wrong.
If you can find a guy that is Joe Burrow up here, then you don't need the athletic traits, I guess.
How many of those are there? I mean, those are rare as well.
But we also have a guy who I think is one of our best weapons is Kevin Stefanski, just like San Francisco. So
now, and I don't know if you have this clip in your rundown or not, but Ken Carman went off on Jalen Milroe and this idea of him being a Kevin Stefanski quarterback.
Yes,
well, who seems to really think he's who really thinks he's a Kevin Stefanski quarterback? Kevin Stefanski. Deshaun Watson is the example. DTR to a lesser extent. We go, well, he needs a Kirk Cousins. He needs these middle, Case Keenum. Does he need those, or is that just what he's been stuck with? Not to say he can't win with him, which is a credit to him, but based on what he's been looking at, Cam Ward, and then like Jalen Milroe, where he has a whole lot of interest in these guys, like clearly Kevin Stefanski sees where the league is going and goes, I want me one of those guys. Now, that doesn't mean he won't take Shedeur Sanders. It doesn't mean he won't take a pure pocket quarterback, but he's not stupid. He's sitting there going, if I can get Kirk Cousins to win a playoff game and get this great play out of Kirk Cousins, or I can get it out of Case Keenum, or Baker Mayfield can have the best season of his career, what can I do with this? And I think that's part of how we ended up with Deshaun Watson for for all the things that went wrong with it. But it's also where you can sit there and go, man, if Kevin Stefanski can get what he can get out of those other guys, out of Jalen Milroe, you're sitting there going, wow, that's potent. And look, and I say this because this was a conversation that a lot of people were having twice, which is when Justin Fields was on his way out of Chicago, there were a lot of people who wanted the Browns to trade for him. And then when he was a free agent, there were people who said, let's go get Justin Fields. So there's clearly an appeal that Kevin Stefanski is at least interested in, where he sits there and goes, yeah, man, pocket quarterback's great. I need somebody who can operate on time and win from the pocket. But, man, those tools are fun.
This has been the React. We got to get out of here because Garage Beers is coming on the air momentarily. Stick around. Get your beers. Head to the garage. Pete, any parting words quickly because we got to get out in less than 2 minutes?
Nope. Just enjoy Garage Beers.
Enjoy Garage Beers. Next, thanks to the fantastic Pete Smith. My name is Brad Ward. We'll see you next week on the React. Keep it locked at the OBR. We are out.